Through his practice, YoMath.cloud, drawing on more than 20 years of classroom teaching and one-on-one coaching, he designs personalized curricula that meet students where they are and steadily move them toward true understanding, not just test performance. Born in East Oakland, California, Yohan has lived and worked in a wide range of communities, from the homes of the very wealthy to the deeply impoverished. He noticed that most kids, regardless of background, share a natural love of learning and helping others. Watching that light fade for so many children across income levels led him to recognize deeper systemic failures in how students are taught and supported. After spending years helping students heal from math-related trauma created in other classrooms, he became a math teacher himself, working at his alma mater, which is Crossroads. Some of you all are from Crossroads, and several private schools across Los Angeles. He began tutoring at Pomona College as an English major, then continued his studies at UCLA, earning a master's in urban planning, all while tutoring and teaching across the city. At YoMath.cloud, Yohan focuses on making math feel approachable for elementary through high school students in subjects like algebra 1 and 2, geometry, trigonometry, and procalculus. He collaborates closely with families, schools, and students to track progress, target specific problem areas, and build the executive functioning and study habits needed for long-term success. Drawing on his own private school experience and nearly 2 decades of teaching and tutoring at leading independent schools in Los Angeles, where he taught middle and high school math, advised students, and created individualized plans, along with training in data science oriented math skills and modern learning tools, he brings a calm, structured, and relational approach that helps even anxious or neurodivergent students feel capable, supported, and proud of their growth in math. So without further ado, I welcome Johan. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, Brittany. Really appreciate it. And thank you for having me here. Thank you to the parents and folks here uh, to, um, to discover what we're presenting today. So let me go ahead and hop right into this presentation. I'm going to be sharing this with you guys also and following up with folks after this presentation so that you can be able to read it on your own and do any cross-referencing and research that you may want. But this is something that I put together most especially for this session. Thank goodness I met Brittany because this is something that we talk about quite often. Now, let me just see here. I'm trying to, here we go. So let's get right into it. Algorithm of opportunity, how math predicts and protects your child's success. I have been trying to stress this for people for a very long time that math is is the most important subject to predict your child's future. A lot of us talk a lot about how important math is, and we say a lot of these platitudes and we say these things about how important and it is and financial literacy and all of that. But I'm going to deep dive into how math trains your brain, why it is especially important for executive functioning and organizational skills, and how children understand their own mind. And I know a lot of people ask about grants and scholarship opportunities. This is directly related to that. So my background, as Brittany pretty much said, I was born in East Oakland, California. My mother was a nurse and my father is a musician. And during this time, I was homeschooled until I was about 9 years old. Once me and my mother moved to Los Angeles, I went to public school called Coeur d'Alene in Venice. Well, actually, first I started at Marcus Garvey School and then went to Coeur d'Alene. And when I went to Coeur d'Alene, I was in third grade. I took a placement test, and my math was at a fifth grade level, and my reading was at a sixth grade level. So I was able to go from third to fifth grade the following year. Skipping a grade put me into what was known as the gifted program. I don't know if they call it that anymore. But from there, I transferred to private school to Crossroads, and I was there from sixth to 12th grade. And it was at this time that math became particularly difficult for me And what I started learning was that a lot of my peers had tutors. Um, I was able to get through math. I was meeting with my teachers. My mom couldn't afford a tutor at the time. So I had to kind of do whatever I could do to sustain and get through. I generally got through math okay, usually with maybe a B minus or a C or a B when I really tried really hard. But math was always pretty much the bane of my existence at this point, even though I was doing fine and studious in all my other classes. Then I went to Pomona College in Claremont, where I got an English bachelor's with distinction. And it was my freshman year that I had a math professor that turned everything around. She was very hard. And she said on the very first day, she said, "This is Calc 101. I only do hard problems and I don't use calculators." But she explained things so well that me and all my friends suddenly understood what we didn't understand before. And it was around this time that I started tutoring. And in college, year by year, every single time I started finding these common problem areas that kids were falling into and nobody was fixing. So after that, once I graduated, I went to UCLA with a master's in urban planning with a focus on regional and international development. But I see education as part of that. Urban planning was mainly grown out of social services and out of public health. And right now, I think that our education system right now is in dire need and is becoming, quite frankly, a public health issue. So, my personal story uh, has become very common. As it says here, my experience has become common, but I had a transformative math teacher and other support systems. I did have my friends, I had other tutoring sessions and other things around me to help push me through. Since I started tutoring, I've witnessed math skills deteriorate in all economic sectors from Bel Air to Watts. In my view, math is a civic duty. Even with kids that tell me, "Oh, I don't see myself doing math or being a mathematician or a scientist or anything that's uh, numbers related per se in their career," I tell them, "Well, try being a tutor, try teaching someone else." And suddenly they have this awareness that they have something that they can pass on to other people to help others. So I really want to stress that the lack of mathematical education is now something that I think we need to look at as a service to each other in all of our communities. So going on to this second section, the most important section, math versus child development from kindergarten to career. If you do not get a tutor for any other subject, you should get a tutor for math. Math and supplemental educational assistance, such as what Brittany is also providing, makes the difference of a child's well-being academically, socially, and psychologically. Why should you get a tutor or supplemental help? Well, first of all, getting a tutor or college prep services are normal and essential for your child's success and career trajectory. There is no substitute, okay? Firstly, you might want to get a tutor for emotional regulation for the entire family. It takes the stress off the parents, and it also takes some stress off the teachers. It takes stress off of the child. Secondly, for executive functioning and organizing, having regular sessions with a tutor at least once a week will keep your child on track to understand how to divide up their time, how to prioritize certain things, how to make sure to be accountable for the work they said they were going to do, how to check their work, how to check their grades, and to become independent. Thirdly, for advocacy and networking. What do I mean by that? I've met a lot of teachers who do not grade well. They don't necessarily teach well. They don't necessarily communicate well. And there have been times where I've had to step in on parent teacher conferences, advocate for the student, send emails. When I tell people that I'm also a math teacher, they tend to loosen up. A lot of math teachers are a little hesitant with working with tutors because they think tutors are just doing the work. And also on the networking side of things, when it comes to college placement, programs that you may want to get into, whatever the tutor is also into, they have also other resources and networks that they can plug you into. Lastly, it's for reinforcement, not reteaching. The tutor is not supposed to teach the kid. The tutor is supposed to reinforce what they've learned to strengthen it and to hopefully advance them past where they are in class. Why math? Math, as we know it, the general definition is the science of numbers and shapes. Branches of mathematics include arithmetic, algebra, geometry, and trigonometry. Math is not just calculation, meaning just giving the right answer. Math is directly related to the brain development of the child. Success in mathematics requires three pillars: executive functioning, delayed gratification, and the emotional regulation necessary to navigate cognitive dissonance during problem solving.
It's
Okay?
like, because then people know, like,
So
oh, he could have a B.
sorry. Okay, there we go. So just to quickly explain that, executive functioning. Okay, a lot of you guys have probably heard that term. It's very widely used when talking about people that may be on the spectrum or learning differences. Executive functioning is your ability to prioritize and set what you're going to do. Delayed gratification. You may have to spend about 5 minutes on a math problem, but getting to the answer, you gotta wait for that, and you may not get the right answer. You may have to do it again, wanting to just get it over with. And that delayed gratification, as many of you know, is a very important thing for a child's development, especially to make sure that they're not just rushing into things. And the emotional regulation for the cognitive dissonance is, many of you have seen it when you get a word problem or you get any kind of math problem. Your brain can go in about 5, 10 different directions. Just to catch you up, for those that just started, I am letting you all know the extreme importance of a math tutor specifically, and getting supplemental educational assistance. And as we're saying, math is directly related to executive functioning, delayed gratification, and emotional regulation. Four basic profiles. There's four basic profiles that I've come across in my years of teaching and tutoring. Early and consistent involvement are long-term investments. Okay. Tutors cost roughly about 1 to 5% of the family income. The return on investment from a math tutor is exponential. Okay. You don't just go up consistently, you end up shooting up beyond where you may have imagined. Okay. These are the four basic profiles, and I divided them into high income, high involvement, high income, low involvement, average income, high involvement, and low income, low involvement. Now, I want to be clear about something. Involvement does not equal malintent or negligence. Involvement means how much time and energy and resources you can pour into your kid. High involvement means you can, go to all the parent teacher conferences, be on top of everything that your kid is doing, probably do homework with them, check over their homework, look at everything there, all of that stuff, put them in programs, go everywhere with them. Low involvement is more so maybe both parents or the single parent may have too much work to do and they can't do everything. They don't have the time and the energy. They can't look over everything that the kid is doing. They may have to travel. They may be the breadwinner, or both parents are breadwinners, and they also want their kid to have a certain sense of independence. So, high involvement doesn't necessarily mean being a helicopter parent, but low involvement doesn't mean that you're neglecting your child. It's just that you cannot necessarily watch over everything that they do. Usually people become a little bit more quote unquote low involvement or less involved around 8th, 9th grade and into high school. And some parents, they don't let up. They're always involved. Okay. So I don't want anybody to think that if they identify with any of these profiles that low involvement means they don't care. High income is usually, we're talking about $1 million plus. They're probably getting a tutor at about $200 an hour, 5 days a week. They're picking up their kid from school, going right home, and the tutor is there. And they're keeping that tutor, let's say if they do it from kindergarten to 12th grade, that's an average of about somewhere between $700K to $1 million invested into that child just with the tutor. High income, low involvement. They make about the same as the high income, high involvement, and they're going to pay the cost. They may not necessarily be involved in everything, but they will pay about the same as a high involved parent. Average income, high involvement. We're talking about basically between 80,000 to 200K. they're spending anywhere from about $600 to $100 an hour, and they might be meeting with that tutor 5 times a week. And for that 13 years, that investment is about $90,000 to $250,000 overall. Low income, low involvement, we're talking below 80K. Usually they may not have a tutor, or they have inconsistent tutoring, and they may spend over those 13 years somewhere on the average of about 70,000, which is still a lot of money, but we're talking about throughout their entire life. And the benefits that can come from that, they're not necessarily going to see the same amount of benefits. They're probably really trying to tough it out and pull themselves up by their bootstraps, so to speak. So we're looking at the 4 profiles in college and beyond, okay? The way I developed this, what I'm presenting, is I took the California math standards, I took the California child developmental standards, basically where they should be at by those grades and ages, and what the prescribed actions are if they're behind or struggling on math, divided among these 4 basic family profiles. Just to see here, do we have any people here with kids that are in elementary school? If anybody's on video, okay, we have a few people here, elementary school. This is an extremely important time. I'm gonna share this with you all so that you can read it on your own. But I stress this part because me and a lot of math teachers have placed that a lot of the future math issues that kids have start in elementary school. So let's start with kindergarten. The standards by this time in kindergarten is usually they should know place value, 11 to 19. They should know how to do finger counting. The usual hurdle at this point, they don't see 10 as a single unit of 10 parts. So they know probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and can count to 10, but they don't quite understand what that means. So what do? The action, we force rote memory of the symbols of numbers without necessarily true number sense. And then we say, okay, 11, 12, 13, we just make them count again on their fingers. First grade, the standard, we want them to be able to know how to fill in missing add-ins. Meaning if I have 8 plus blank equals 13, what is the blank? The hurdle here, the brain is still developing the ability to do mental math. So what do? More repetition and rote memory. Second grade, multi-digit addition. The hurdle here, conceptual place value dexterity, meaning what is 10 less than 200? What do? More repetition. Third grade, now this third grade is an extremely important time because this is when we want multiplication fluency and they start learning fractions. What's the hurdle here? Memory recall, the brain development here. So for example, what's 4 times 6? The child tries to answer from memory, they aren't sure, so they might do 4 times 5 and add from there, or they guess. So what do? More repetition. Fourth grade, multi-digit division. The hurdle here, they have to manage multiple facts and operations that don't seem related to each other. If you have to do division by hand, the subtraction, the multiplication, the carrying, the divide, all of that stuff, the remainder, you have to take all these parts together. What do? More repetition, or we give them a calculator. Fifth grade, the next biggest hurdle. We have unlike denominators, decimals, 3D space, fractional thinking. So the hurdle here, high cognitive load and abstract reasoning and multiple steps. And again, what do? More repetition and give them a calculator. And usually between about 4th to 5th grade is when we have our summer setback where kids kind of can't remember what they learned, or if they don't practice, they come back into the next year at a deficit. So what do the 4 profiles usually do at this time? Developmental gaps are mended by tutors for early childhood development. Remember, the return on investment from math tutors is exponential. So what do high income, high involvement? If they have a tutor, they hire the tutor early. The child learns that learning is for life. The tutors accompany them on vacation, and the student starts to see their social standing. What does that mean? By 5th grade, right? If this kid is more fluent in math, and they see the other kids complaining or disliking math, or they don't get it, or they try to help a kid and that kid doesn't get it, or the teacher is trying to help them and the kid is whining, the kid kind of starts to see by then the difference of where they are versus their peers already. Okay. High income, high involvement. If they don't have a tutor, well, usually at a certain point, by fifth grade, especially, there's going to be a loss of confidence, but the parents will still have some kind of intervention. High income, low involvement. When they have a tutor, by the time the tutor is called, they're going to have to triage some bad teaching. And then after that happens, the child returns to love learning and they become more career driven. By fifth grade, kids kind of know what they want to do. But if they have trouble in math, then anything math related, they're going to probably not do anymore. If they have no tutor, they lose their confidence. They may have developmental or behavioral issues, and then they begin to have a loss in interest in school, or they're going to do whatever they can to kind of get by. Average income, high involvement. If you have a tutor, then that tutor is going to fix learning gaps. They're going to attract more prestigious schools, and they become career driven. No tutor, same as before, loss of confidence, at risk for behavioral issues, loss of interest in school. Low income, low involvement. With a tutor, the tutor becomes their advocate. They triage bad teaching. They attract more prestigious schools, and the child becomes more career driven. Without a tutor, the same as above. They lose their confidence and they start having other developmental issues. Okay. And this is all within, 2 to 3 years of each other, very quickly. Junior high, this is where some of you guys probably are right here. And I stress to people, this is the most important time. Okay. Sixth grade, you see ratios, rates, negative numbers. This also becomes a hurdle. Seventh grade, the biggest hurdle, multi-step proportions, linear equations. This is when you start getting into algebraic concepts. All of these years, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, they have to do more and more repetition, more use of a calculator, and the gap between those 3 months of summer makes them go back into the next year with a little bit of a deficit. Okay. I usually tell people, if you don't get a tutor at any other time, you really should start looking between seventh and eighth grade. Seventh grade especially is when bad habits start forming. So what do the four profiles do in junior high? Within 2 years, okay, I'm talking fifth to seventh grade, within 2 years, the executive functioning is fully tested. Academic tracking is set by seventh grade. This is a vital time for lifelong scholastic skills. High income, high involvement by middle school. The students more confident. Their social networking strengthens. They're purpose driven. They connect to their other ambitious peers. Without a tutor, they're not really concerned with their blind spots. They might overreach when trying to go into honors and AP classes in the next year. By seventh, eighth grade, they may have a high involved family and they have a lot of resources and money and things like that. So they may become a little bit overconfident when they try to reach into AP classes and things like that in ninth grade. High income, low involvement. With the tutor, we triage the learning gaps, we advocate for the student, we end the bad habits, and that student starts connecting to their more ambitious peers. Without the tutor, we have the developmental issues. They lose interest in school. They overreach in some of their high school classes. They end up possibly wasting money, and they become a little bit cynical. They start finding themselves not really interested in school anymore. The more things get tougher. Average income, high involvement. They become purpose driven. They become scouted by schools. They're showing signs of career promise. They connect to their ambitious peers. Without the tutor, they become more cynical. They use survival mode. They're doing brute force learning. They become more stressed out. Low income, low involvement. Again, with the tutor, we're triaging. We're instilling better habits. They're becoming more eligible for recruiting. They're career focused, and they connect to their driven peers above them. No tutoring, again, behavioral issues. They become more cynical and they fall into bad habits. And this is when they start, people start wondering who their friends are and why their friends seem a little bit questionable. This is the point where kids are discovering their place in life. And if they feel like math is one of those places that they can't survive in, then most of their career choices go along with that. So they're trying to figure out how to either appear smart and powerful or compensate for their lack of confidence in certain places. Okay. Now, high school, the part you're probably most interested in. By ninth grade, they're either in geometry or algebra 1. By this time, what is their hurdle? They have to show their work. They have to show proofs. They have to turn the abstract into concrete. They have to pay attention to the individual teacher demands. They have to prepare for the SAT and ACT. And now their GPA starts. So in ninth grade, let's say they're getting A's in all their classes and they're a studious student, but they have a math teacher that they, for whatever reason, they just don't get it. They're having trouble with it. And now they're having a B minus or a C, or they have a B. But that grade is now pulling down their GPA, right? And that starts from ninth grade. So whatever GPA they have in ninth grade sometimes starts that average. If you know how to do averages, you know what I'm talking about. 10th grade, same issue. 11th grade, same issue. And the math becomes harder, right? Those summers in between, if they forgot how to factor, if they don't quite remember any of those algebraic rules, they carry over year by year and they start compounding, right? Until finally they're in 12th grade. And like I said, every year, what do? We give them calculators. They say, meet with the teacher. We say, practice. We say, do all of these things. But you can imagine if they've been having this issue for some time, let's say since third or fourth grade, by this time they're kind of checked out. And math is pretty much looked at as one of those, vestigial appendages that you can just have it and cut it off whenever you need it. Or they look at it as, well, if I do as well as I can in math, then it'll up my GPA. So they try to do whatever they can to do as well in it to make up for lost time. But there's certain things that you can't make up for if the kid doesn't know where their problem area is. If the child doesn't know and the parent doesn't know, then the teacher doesn't really know. I usually know because I've been doing this for a while. So the 4 profiles in high school: high income, high involvement. By the time they go from 9th to 12th grade, if they have a tutor, this student is probably already multilingual. They probably started a business. They're college ready. They're purpose driven, and they're still connecting to ambitious peers. Without a tutor, they're facing false confidence, imposter syndrome. They're buying access. They're masking their weak areas. Okay. Some people really just think that if I just, look smart, then it'll pay off. But math is one of those places that you have to prove what you're saying. You can't just do word salads. High income, low involvement. Again, the tutor is triaging the gaps. If they just started getting a tutor in high school, they're triaging gaps in their learning from middle school and elementary school. They're advocating for the student. They're ending habits. The student becomes purpose-driven, college-focused, connecting to peers. Without a tutor, I've seen this often. By high school, once they've developed some of these developmental issues and they lose some interest in school, they become much more manipulative, and at the same time, they become impressionable. They're trying to socialize their way into success. Average income, high involvement with the tutor. If they've gotten the tutor by this point, they become purpose-driven. They become much more qualified for grants and scholarships, confident, and so on. Without the tutor, they experience burnout, frustration, they start disliking school, and they become impressionable. Low income, low involvement. Again, we're triaging habits. We're getting them scholarships and grants. They're career focused, and they're connecting to everyone else that's ambitious. Without it, they also become manipulative and impressionable. They're trying to find their way in their social circle with little guidance and trying to make up for what they can't do academically. I want to stress again, low involvement doesn't mean that the parent doesn't care or is negligent. It just means that they're a bit more hands off, or they're probably too busy and they're working and trying to maintain everything else in the household. Okay, so involvement, high, like even here, average income, high involved family without a tutor, they may be trying to push the student to do more, putting them in all these places. They might be trying to tutor the kid themselves. They're trying to say, yo, what's going on? Putting them on punishment, certain things like that, because they're trying to get the best out of them without spending more money and getting a tutor. But all that does is create more emotional hostility. Okay. I got about 15 minutes and we're almost done. Okay. So after college, and I want to stress that this does not include learning differences or various life circumstances. Lots of things happen. So when they go to college and after college, what happens to these kids? Okay. We're talking high income, high involved. This household here. By the time this kid is in college, they're well-traveled, they're multilingual, they're cultured, and they probably started a business in undergrad. And if they decide to continue school, they're going to delegate like their parents did and hire people or distribute the work. And they're going to likely hire all the profiles below them. Okay, this is the manager, this is the owner, this is the CEO, this is the person that started a company with a few of their friends in the dorm room. High income, low involvement. This person usually matures in college. They refresh their identity. They know that they won't be poor, but they're putting their legacy and finances at risk while they're doing all of this exploring. They may combat imposter syndrome and academically overload to prove themselves. So it's not that they won't survive, but they're going to be pushing a lot harder and taking on more on their shoulders. Average income, high involvement. This kid is usually extended their social circle. They have a lot of flexibility to career pivot. They gain ground to outperform their parents, and they have more freedoms, and they're upwardly mobile. Low income, low involvement. After this time, their social circle is undefined. They have to restart their academic profile, and they have to take on debt to gain economic ground, and they have to overhaul their personality, and they're less job secure. And this is if they don't have a tutor. We're talking about a worst case scenario. Okay. The entire point is that we're trying to give them all the tools they need to know that they can always figure out their way through a problem along with the resources around them. Okay. So affording help. These are my recommendations. Okay. The do's and don'ts. The do's. Okay. You don't want to just hire a tutor or hire anybody. I would say pay for at least 1 to 2 hours, gauge their work philosophy and their style and their work style, and see if it works for you and it meshes with yourself and your kid. Get referrals from parents, ask for the tutors' transcripts for their legitimacy, and tutoring for adults. Try exploring that. I want to encourage more parents to look at getting math tutoring for themselves so that you can have more homework time with your child. And you can tutor your child. If you can tutor your kid at least up to 8th grade, you will see a tremendous difference between them and their peers. Here's what I stress on the don'ts. Don't be cheap or cut corners, okay? Quality is very important. Don't wait until their grades drop. We're talking about prevention. Don't use AI as a replacement. AI will make mistakes. AI as a replacement. I can tell you now, you can try it if you want to. If your kid is studious and they know what they're doing and know what to look for, it's a great tool. But if your student doesn't know what's happening, if you end up with a test and the student takes a picture of it and asks ChatGPT why the teacher said this was wrong and the student believes that it's right, and ChatGPT sides on the side of the teacher, and the teacher did in fact grade it wrong, then the student isn't going to be able to do anything, and they're just going to let it go. And that could have been their final exam. That could be their midterm. It could be the difference between a B and an A. Okay, so you can use AI if you want, but it's not going to be a replacement. When you look at my page, yomath.cloud, it was yomath.study. I rebranded it to yomath.cloud. I give duo and trio sessions, so meaning 2 to 3 people maximum. I do 10 to 12 sessions maximum on subjects. So if it's just one person, it's going to end up being 120 an hour. If it's 2 people, it changes to 100 an hour per person. And if it's 3 people, it's 90 an hour per person. I do test prep, SAT, ACT, IC, GRE for adults. Solo, it's 150 an hour, 2 people, 120 an hour. And again, I have split pay available, and there's ways of you extending this for like 12 months to 24 months. So you don't have to pay it all at one time. Yes, it is an investment, but remember, should be about 1 to 5% of your income. It shouldn't extend more than that. So in conclusion, math is the canary in the coal mine. Depending on how your student or your child is doing in math is going to tell you a lot about their future. Math classes are the most common pitfalls that sink a child's confidence, weighs down their GPA, and immediately changes the trajectory of their ambitions. Your best solution is early intervention with tutoring. To be competitive and fight against odds, supplemental help is necessary and normal. And as I've said to quite a few people, and I've said to Brittany, we need truth tellers for this results-driven future, okay? We don't have time for more avoidance. We don't have time for people trying to, excuse my language, but you probably heard this a lot in English, BSing their way through essays, okay? We don't have time for that anymore. We are at a point now where we need people that can actually verify things, show things, especially mathematically, and show the logic between all of it. All of it. I'm an English major, and I found that math actually helped me communicate with people a lot more so that I can show them things step by step and be more creative with my metaphors and my similes and ways of getting people to think in a more process-driven way. So with that, I'd like to thank you. I don't know if we really have any time for any questions. I guess I have about 5 minutes that I've shaved off from talking, but hopefully this has made sense to everyone. And hopefully you guys understand all of this information. And again, I will share this all for you to read on your own and to share with others. Okay.
Thank you, Yohan. Yeah, you have about 5 minutes. Well, 6 now minutes.
Okay.
I want to recognize that the Harvard Westlake people who joined a little bit later. They had an event today, a parent or kid event, or I think the family event. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. So this will be a really great time for all my HW people on the call to ask any follow questions that you have instead of just waiting to the end. And we do appreciate you all joining because I recognize this was a very overwhelming day for you guys because you all had a lot of activities today. So definitely feel free to ask any questions.
I see a
Since you
question
all
here.
came in the middle.
Oh, yeah, I see a question here. Is tutoring in person or virtual? I do it virtually. Meeting in person and virtual, quite frankly, I've seen it doesn't really make that much of a difference. I can see exactly, I can use the camera to see what a kid is doing. I can see their work. You could send me a picture of their tests and their homework, and I'm going to know exactly what they're doing. I know when a kid is rushing. I know when a kid is not studying. It's like clockwork at this point. I found that, you know, I can give them a problem, tell them to do it. I look at it and it can become just that easy. I see Mr. O'Neill Barnaby here. I see a few people that I've known, and I don't know if folks, I see other people that are in math teaching and stuff like that here, and I don't know if anybody can necessarily co-sign all of what I've said, but there are people that I've brought in here to back up some of the things that I've been trying to constantly tell people, that math is the most important class if you want to especially see positive results for your kid. A lot of people, again, asking about grants and scholarships. You already know the SAT, ACT, and their GPA. And quite likely, if you do have a studious student, I'm willing to bet that their struggle point is likely their math classes. If they're planning on being a doctor or anything in a higher professional setting, they're going to want to take AP classes, and they're likely going to need a tutor, not necessarily because I don't understand the information, but because that AP class is going to take up a little bit more of their time, and they have to prioritize and have their executive functioning and help where needed. So I'm not sure if anybody else has another question. I'm going to stop chattering a little bit. Hi, O'Neill.
Well, I'm actually raising my hand for a question, actually.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So I know that I came a little bit late, but I got when I came in, you guys have mentioned college quite a bit. And my question is that something that you all are pushing even in today's age where college may have lost some of its validity and it's not producing perhaps the degrees that are helpful in the economy or the job market itself?
Great question. What I'm going to say is this. A lot of people are avoiding college because of math. A lot of people are avoiding college because they're like, if this is what school is, I don't want to do it anymore. So by the time they've gotten to, 11th grade and then all that other stuff, and then I tell people, when you get to college, you're going to still have at least a first year math requirement of some sort. A lot of people are saying, oh, well, college doesn't give me this and doesn't give me that. The people's survival and their executive functioning skills getting through school, I found college to be a lot of fun. I learned a lot. I connected with my professors. I got even more job opportunities. I was able to study abroad. I made lifelong friends. I got even more job opportunities. So yeah, we can talk about college and, oh, my degree, this and that, but you're talking about some of the smartest people in the world all in one place. And I don't see college not being important anytime soon. And I would suggest to anybody, if you consider the fact that a lot of people find college to be extremely important, that maybe that messaging is there for you to not be there. Okay. So I don't see how college won't be important going on in the future. There's lots of other options. There's trade schools. There's lots of these things, but academics, math, reading, all of the things that you're going to need to survive in college, you're going to need for the rest of your life. Research skills, access to certain things, you're not going to get that outside of college. So I would highly suggest it personally.
I'll address your
I think we
question
have
at
time
the
for
end
one.
of my, yeah, I'll address your question at the end of my portion. I don't want to eat up Johan's time, but I did write it down. I will address it.
And
Thank you
there's
for
one
your
more question.
question.
One more question. They say, how do you determine where to begin with students as their initial assessment? I usually look at what tests they've already had, where they are, and then ask them, have you ever had trouble in math before? Usually, most of the time, the answer is yes. So as soon as they tell me where they had trouble in math, around what grade, I kind of know where to start. I usually start with, some initial assessment of a few questions. But if you give me their quizzes and tests and their homework, or I do a couple of questions with them, I'll know pretty much in about 10 minutes where to start. And that's it for me. I think that my time is up. I'll put my email in here, and I'm going to follow up with everybody afterward for more questions and everything. But like I said, whether it's me or anyone else, math tutoring is extremely essential. And hopefully you guys do find the help that you need to make sure that your kid is successful. Okay.